Hello, everyone. Today we have an extremely interesting topic, which is karma. What is my karma trying to teach me? I think it's the one thing I get constantly asked about, and it should be a constant question, because it's the whole issue of why are we born? What are we here? What is the purpose of life? Most of the time, too many people just never ask those questions. They just take things as they come and then take the next thing and the next thing, and there's no sense of purpose or progress or even the sense of what it is, what does progress even look like? Why do things happen? And it was incomprehensible to me before I found the spiritual path, how everybody wasn't asking that question all the time. It was the only question I wanted to ask. What is going on here? Why am I happy sometimes? Why am I not happy other times? Why is there so much difference in the world? And nobody in school, none of my teachers, none of my professors even asked the question, what to speak of giving me a decent answer, which is why my formal education didn't last that long, because it was nothing that I wanted to know. Until I met these teachings, and then a few years later, I met Swami Kriyananda. So self-evidently, this is what we want to know, and I learned about the concept of karma, which is what we're going to talk about today. And I think it's perhaps the single most important thing that these teachings have to offer. So what is my karma trying to teach me? That's what we're going to talk about today. So, shall we?
We shall. Thank you, Asha. Our first question we have is, why do some people suffer so much more than others?
Well, that's the basic fundamental question, isn't it? Is the world fair? Is there any cause and effect relationship that we're working with? Is it totally random? Is it just like the throw of the dice? Is it nothing but a gamble? Okay, here are the principles that we have to work with. I think I have to sneeze. Let me see. When I sneeze, I have a very loud sneeze. Apparently, sneezes are genetic. My mother could be heard by the neighbors, and I can also be heard by the neighbors. But apparently all this conversation has put it aside, so we're not going to actually do it. Sneezing into a microphone is an experience that none of you really want to have. So now we're going to go back to the question being about suffering and whether or not things are just casual or not. Okay, karma does not work without reincarnation. You have to just start with that premise. You cannot make karma really work. Once in a while, you can see in a cause and effect relationship if you're only thinking about the cycle of one lifetime. But the inequities of this world cannot be explained if our only sense of continuing reality, consistent, continuing, interrelated reality, is from the birth to the death. You have to have that we're born at a certain stage of development. We develop through one lifetime. We take with us whatever we have learned in that lifetime, and then we bring it into the lifetime after. Okay, here are a few of the basic principles of karma, which is this is an interrelated universe. And the most interesting thing about this has been the spiritual teaching of India for as long as there is any possibility of recording it, which is thousands and thousands of years, that this basic principle that it is an interrelated universe. And now we don't have to go to scripture. We can go right to science, where they and I can't speak of it from that angle as clearly as many people can, but what I understand, everybody understands now that this universe, the material world, is a manifestation of energy, and that energy is a continuous field of energy. And they have an enormous number of fascinating interrelationships that they talk about, of dualities and of actions on this side having an effect on this side. And we can just see it in the very simple context that we live through. There was a woman who was a Buddhist teacher, and she was skeptical, even though she was a Buddhist, about the principle of karma. And so she had a very important speaking engagement. She was taking care of her granddaughter. Her granddaughter had a virus of some kind, sneezed in her grandmother's face. Grandmother got sick. She couldn't keep her speaking engagement. So grandmother tried to think, why am I missing my speaking engagement? Well, because I was taking care of my granddaughter. But why do I have a granddaughter to take care of? Because I have a daughter. And why do I have a daughter? Because I have a husband. Well, how did I meet my husband? Well, I went to a certain college. Well, why did I go to that college? And basically, she realized she could trace it all the way back to the story of Adam and Eve. If you just take one cause and effect after another, after another, after another, where do you cut it? And you also watch in life, you talk about people who are suffering, but you also watch how often the results of our actions do not manifest in the course of a lifetime. We tend to think of it more in terms that people get away with bad stuff and it never seems to catch up with them. But by the same token, many people are very kind and very good and very generous, and they never seem to get the reward that they should have either. So we start with the idea that not every karma can fulfill itself in the allotted time span of the life of one birth. Also, there's another factor, which is what Yogananda called the cross current of our egoic will. And egoic will is my deciding that this is what I want to have happen, and then having enough energy to sort of keep that moving. Okay, so I keep my energy moving, and I can overcome a lot of obstacles. And here's a story that I often use to illustrate this. So you're 3 years old and you're on your tricycle, and there's a guy in your neighborhood and he's 10, and he's a bully. So he sees you on your tricycle and he turns his bike in front of you, knocks you off your tricycle, laughs when you hit the ground, and then sails off on his bicycle. Okay, the kid is 3 years old. He's mad about it, but he can't do anything about it. Time passes. 25 years pass. The 3-year-old is a smart guy, and now he's the president of the local bank. The bully kid is not so bright. He's trying to get some money for some business he's trying to start. He goes to the president of the bank to ask him for a loan. It's that 3-year-old who's never forgiven him for driving over him like that. And no, there's no way in the world you're going to get this loan. Now, the bank president may remember and is just doing it out of malice. Who knows what his reasoning is? But the bully did something that set energy in motion, but he was big enough and strong enough to drive away from that. But the energy was set in motion. You took advantage of somebody's weakness and used your strength. Now you're the one who's weak, you need help, nobody's going to give it to you, because it was always out there waiting to catch up with you. So that's part of it. We don't know. However, the difficulty with that single statement is that implies that when things don't go right, you're being punished. And that is not always true, because the other factor that has to be put into this is what is really the purpose of human life? The egoic self. And the egoic self is the infinite spirit, the infinite soul, identified with this one limited lifetime. And the ego just likes things to be easy and pleasurable. Just think about that. That's how we define it was good. It was a good day. You know, no challenges, no problems, no difficulties. Everything went my way. That was a good day. And the day in which I had challenges and difficulties, that was a bad day. And if the only purpose of life is just to see how little energy you can put out and how little you can learn in the course of a lifetime, yeah, you want it all to just be smooth and no challenging. If, however, the entire purpose of life is to awaken us to what our true potential is, to break this dream of limitation and separation and weakness and frailty, and the idea that the ephemeral world is going to give us eternal happiness. In other words, our fundamental concept of life is wrong. And the purpose of having a human incarnation is to learn something, not to just stay the same whatever we are right at this point and die as we were born and then do the whole thing over again. Is that really what we want? Are you really at the maximum of your potential and you just want to sit right where you are forever? So in that concept, if you're challenged, is that bad? If one of your little dreams, your little fantasies doesn't work out for you, is that bad? If you're really pushed to the limit of the strength that you think you have and you are forced then to pray, to call upon God, to see yourself in an entirely different light, to find a strength within you that you didn't know was there. And then you have this magnificent power within yourself that you never would have had if you weren't challenged. Is that bad? So you see how complicated it gets? And you have to go back to, what is the purpose of life? Why was I born? What is a human being? What is my potential? I have very, very long classes on this subject on the YouTube channel here, and I highly encourage you to study this subject, because when you begin to understand this, everything changes. Okay.
Thank you. The next question is very much related to that. How do I know if I'm actually learning the lesson or just repeating mistakes?
Well, we are repeating mistakes. We're always repeating mistakes. And the lesson is always deeper and deeper. I speak from many, many years of experience. And so I think about it like this. Here, let me give you this image, which you'll hear me say this on many different recordings, because it really is the one that works. Okay, we tend to think of progress as linear. We tend to think everybody lines up here and the goal is over there, and we walk in a straight line. Some are ahead, some are behind. I can tell exactly where I am by seeing where I am. There's the finish line, there's the starting line. It's not at all like that. Our progress is, I sometimes say, like the flight of a bumblebee. It just goes a little over here and a little over here and a little over here, and we're unfolding and unpacking a very multi-leveled, very subtle. And we can learn a lesson on a certain level, and then recognize later that that was just the top of it. That was just the superficial attitude. There's many deeper threads. We can see it as related to certain issues, and then we remember other things, which doesn't even take into account past lives, that we might have had experiences that are related. So here's the image that I think works the best. Think of it, our progress, our learning is a spiral staircase. And in the center of that spiral staircase, there's a pillar. And that pillar has many stripes on it, but they're not vertical stripes. They're not horizontal stripes, I mean. So it's not like when you go up the stairs, well, here I'm going through pink, done with pink. Now I'm in green, green's finished. Now we're into purple, purple's done. Not at all. The stripes are vertical. And not only are they vertical, they're of varying widths. So something can be, enormously wide for a while, and then it gets super narrow, gets down to a thread, and then it blows up again like a balloon. And we are going around it in a circular pattern. We are progressing, or maybe not, but anyway, we're at least moving. We're moving around like that. We have to think of it as a non-physical thing, because it's right, we can just keep circling. But let's assume we're growing. Always on the left side, so to speak, are these vertical stripes. So we're going around on our little circular pattern. All of a sudden, we've met green again. And so here we are in green, and maybe green is really, really long, and we finally get through green, and we think, whoa, I have learned everything green has to teach me, and we're so happy. Then we do pink, purple, red, orange, and we go around like that, and then, what do you know? We're back at green. Now, if we have been even slightly awake, we're a smidgen higher up on green, So we're learning green, but we're learning green a little differently, a little more subtle, at the very least, because, wow, I've seen you before. This is not brand new. I remember you. And so pieces, at least, of what we remember, either of horror and terror and despair, which is not learning anything, or maybe we know a little bit more, I can get through this. And maybe green this time is super short. So we just, boom, that's through green. We think, whoa, I've got green. And then we whiz around again, and the next time green is half the circle. Do you see what I mean? We're still growing, but each time it's like, I understood something, but not quite anything. So not quite everything. Because as we get more subtle, I've been on this path for half a century. I know that sounds really big. It doesn't when you're doing it, because it's always now. It's not 50 years, it's just today. And it was also yesterday, and it'll be tomorrow. So time is weird, but that's a whole different discussion. Time is super weird. Trust me, time is weird. Okay, if I was 20 and somebody said 50 years to me, I wouldn't have had any idea how to think about it. Now I think 50 years. Well, there you have it, 50 years. But the point is, I can look, because I took notes because I was with Swami Kriyananda for 45 of those 50 years. And I can look at those notes. I can see something that I myself wrote down, 25 or 30 years ago. And I wrote it down because it was important to me at the time. And I'll think, wow, I never really understood what that meant. Or I'll see some simple, very simple statement about the spiritual path. And I'll think, wow, I never really understood what that meant. Because I have changed. Because my perspective has changed. And now I see it very differently. So yes, sometimes we do just repeat the same mistakes because it takes longer than just one time through for us to get to the depth of where the delusion really is. Now, the only way we don't learn anything is if we refuse to learn anything. If our entire attitude toward the difficulties we have is, I'm just going to hunker down, I'm going to drink a lot, maybe smoke a lot of marijuana, watch TV, eat a lot of ice cream, and just sort of outlast it. And then eventually the universe changes and we're not in it anymore. And we think, well, I'm through that one. But we haven't learned a thing because we haven't faced it, we haven't introspected, we haven't courageously tried to solve it. So whether or not you're learning is not necessarily that the same thing keeps coming back. It's whether or not you yourself are changing within yourself, even just in your ability to face it. Because you don't know how big the karma is. You don't know how many lifetimes. You don't know how strong the vortex is. All you know is, right now, I'm in front of it, and I have to do the best I can. And it's not like we clear these things out. I've certainly learned, because I've been on this spiral staircase for a long time, just because I've finished with green, I no longer do a victory dance about green. I just say, no more green for now. Because I know the chances are green's going to show up again on a slightly more subtle, just a little different, maybe in a total costume where green's going to be masquerading as yellow. And it's going to take me a little while to figure out, oh my gosh, this is still green, even though I thought it was yellow. You understand what I'm saying. What you have to be is you have to be humble. You have to pray. You have to have a sense that I'm not alone in this. Divine Mother, I have a loving Divine Mother, and my Divine Mother is taking me home. And this is what I often say. If there was an easier way for Divine Mother to take me home, she would take me through that path. The only reason she's dragging me through these briars is because it is the only route home. So instead of rebelling against it, I say, what are you trying to teach me? What have I not yet learned? Here I am again. What is it that I don't know? Be humble and be receptive. Be extremely interested. Don't always be trying to shut the door and make it okay. Just the opposite. Well, here we are again. Isn't that interesting? So what have I not yet learned about this particular experience? It's completely in your hands. It's not mysterious. If you're trying to learn, even if you're a very slow student, the mere fact that you're trying is in itself a learning. Okay?
Thank you. Beautiful answer. Next question is from someone here online. And it says, my actions are sometimes much kinder than my thoughts. How does that affect my karma?
Well, it's always better to do a little better than your worst. Let's put it like that. So if your thoughts are terrible, but at least your actions are under control, good work. You're making progress. But no, of course, it's not enough, because thoughts are really powerful. And as long as you're giving me exactly the answer of how you have to keep learning it on a more subtle level. I behave so well. Why am I still facing this lesson? Because your thoughts stink. That's why. And you think you're going to get away with it just by putting on a nice face? First of all, people are not so stupid. They feel it. And the second thing is, God is not so stupid. He can tell that you're just acting nice, but you're not yet actually nice. And so how it affects your karma is that means you still have more of it. But sometimes acting nice is the very best that we can do. And one of the suggestions that I make to people is really simple. Don't worry about being perfect. Perfect is just way, way too much. Just be a little better than your worst. And I know that sounds like giving in, but it isn't. Trust me. It's in every situation. Just be as good as you can be. And even if that is only a little better than your worst, it's better than your worst. Because what we're working with, there's lots of different images for this. One is a balance scale. You have a certain amount of momentum because of your own past actions. So you have a certain amount of momentum, so things lean this way. I think like the marble of your consciousness rolls, toward the way the scale is tipped. So if you keep adding of the same energy, the same vibration that has caused this to come to you, it'll just keep coming to you because that's the way the energy is tipped. So there's two things you can do. You can stop adding wrong energy. Wrong means not consistent with the divine law, not consistent with the true source of happiness and the true cause of suffering. This is not theology, this is not dogma, this is just the way things are made. You have bad thoughts, you suffer. Even if you behave good, you suffer. And you suffer, one, because you put out magnetism that's going to keep attracting what you're putting out, you're going to be attracting back to yourself. And the other is because you feel terrible when you have bad thoughts. Bad thoughts do not make you happy. You spend your time thinking ill of others, and that makes you all riled up and unhappy. When you're loving and kind, genuinely loving and kind, you're happier. This is the happiness suffering. So you have the balance scale, and if the balance scale is tipped in a way that causes you to have unpleasant, unhappy experiences, there's two things you do. You stop adding energy to the side that you don't want to grow, that you don't want it to get any bigger, and you try to add as much as you can to the side that'll be the counteracting force. If you manage to be nice but have bad thoughts, well, managing to be nice will give you a little on this side, but having bad thoughts will keep it tipped this way. But anything that you do, it's a balance. And it's gotten this way from lifetimes and lifetimes before, when you thought it would make you happy to behave in a certain way. Every single thing that we do, there are two forces that cause us to make our decisions. We're trying to escape suffering. We're trying to find happiness. And we make all our decisions. If you think about your life, every single decision you have made, was because you thought it would increase your happiness and decrease your suffering. In retrospect, many of those decisions were absolutely idiotic, but at the time it always seemed like a good idea, or else you wouldn't have done it. And this is how you gain compassion for people, even when they behave in abominable ways, and you stop judging them. They just don't understand. They think that if I'm cruel, if I abuse someone, if I hurt someone, somehow I will suffer less. And this is often when people have great suffering inside of themselves. They think they will have less suffering if they pass it on to someone else. This is an enormous delusion, but they wouldn't do it if they didn't think it was going to help them. So for ourselves, we just have to look at this. Why am I holding these bad thoughts? What do I think it's going to give me? What can I do that will help counteract it? Just as simple as that. And you will just keep going up that spiral staircase. And if you get through the part of it where you get to be nice, well, that's progress. So the next time you get attacked, even for your thoughts, even when you're behaving nice. They tell you very briefly this one experience that happened with two people in our community. They just, for karmic reasons, who knows what their past lives were, they really did not like each other. They had two women, they had super bad attitude toward each other. So one of the women is in the community kitchen, as it were. The other woman walks in, and let me just think, the other woman walks in. The woman who's in the room is silent. The woman who just walked in starts yelling at her for the awful way that she treats her. The woman is standing there doing nothing. She's being yelled at for the awful way she treats her. So eventually I get called in to arbitrate this dispute among these women. I said to the woman who was in the room standing silently, I said, "What were you thinking?" And of course, every time she saw that woman, her mind just filled up with negative thoughts. And of course, the other woman feels the energy. So even though she was silent, she was radiating all this negativity. And the woman who just walked in reacted to it. I said, you might as well have shouted it or worn it on a big sign. You think your thoughts don't affect? Of course they affect. So if you're not doing anything, you're completely innocent, but your mind is a mess, don't be surprised if the universe responds to you. And it's being perfectly fair. It's just behaving on a more subtle level now, which gives you the opportunity to change in yet another way.
Thank you. This is from a member that is watching live, and she says, I'm a 45-year-old single, child-free woman. I would like to be in a relationship. I understand I might not be a biological mother. How do I surrender to this? Maybe I'm not meant to be in a relationship?
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. We have a global karma going on right now, in which the way in which the universe is inflicting suffering on so many people is through our close romantic relationships, or the desire to have children, or having children who don't turn out to be who we want them to be. All of these are extremely, extremely deep-seated, perfectly understandable desires and longings, that are part of being a human being. So the first thing we have to do is we just have to say, this is just the way I am. And it's a perfectly reasonable thing to want. We're lonely. We need, and we're compelled also, because one of the fundamental purposes of human life is to learn how to love. And it's easy to love in the abstract. What's really challenging is the love in the intimate day-to-day, where the person is always there. And time passes, and the good behavior that we have put on to attract each other begins to wane, and we find out the person's real character. And especially today, in such a fragmented world where we have no idea who people really are, we have no sense of their family, of their upbringing, and the cultures are so, the circumstances are so scattered. Change is happening so fast. Pause for a moment. Change is happening so fast. I have to give myself a rest. Things are changing so fast that you start out, two people can start out in a compatible space, and then things happen so quickly they can find themselves separating. Or you think you know someone, but it takes time. And everything in our society is so, nothing supports relationships. Everything works against it. We have no mature understanding. All of our understanding about relationships is movies, music, novels, television, and it all has one thing in common: it's all fiction. We have almost nothing that really teaches us how to love. So to get back to your question, to start with it, be kind to yourself. This is karma you are facing because somehow there was something for you to learn in this, but also we're also caught in a mass karma at this point, which is appropriate. We wouldn't have been born here if it wasn't appropriate, but this is the way it is. Now, here's my best suggestion for you. You may continue to put out energy to try to have a partnership and maybe find someone, maybe you'll end up with someone who has children, so without giving birth to them, you'll be able to have your desire to be a mother fulfilled. It may be that all of that will happen. Here's what I've often suggested to people. Make a list of everything that you think will happen if you have a partner, or if you have biological children. Just all the things that in your mind you think, if this were true, then that would be true. Then look at that list and see how many of those things actually depend on your having a partner or actually giving birth to children. How many of them could be fulfilled in other ways? Is it really that you want to have my child, or that I want to help children? Is it really that you want a partner? I mean, how many of the things that you think you can do only with a partner would actually be accessible to you if you just accepted the fact that if I'm ever going to have this experience, I'm going to have to manifest it for myself? And then mark everything that you would be able to do even if these other two conditions are never met. Then begin, in other words, to become the person you would imagine that you would be if you had the partner, if you had the child. Because that will do two things. One, you may discover life ain't so bad anyway. And the whole thought that this was required was just one of those delusions that this karma is helping me face and overcome. The other thing that will happen is you will start being a much happier person. You will start being a much more fulfilled person. You will start being a person who is having a good time in the present, rather than just waiting for everything to change so that then I can be happy, which will make you more magnetic, which will also, and don't do it for this reason, but it may increase your chances of attracting someone, and attracting someone better. Because if you're just sitting there waiting to be made whole by someone else who comes, waiting to be made happy by someone else who shows up, you're not as attractive to a really solid person who's living their life with contentment and with creativity. In other words, you're likely to attract a better person, which will increase the chances that everything else will work afterwards. In other words, there's no shortcut. There's no sort of way to cheat this. There's no sort of magic pill that you can take. Your karmic opportunity to learn something that you don't know about who you really are and who you really can be, the more dynamically you face into it and work with it as it is and grow from that, the more everything in your life will improve, because you're living the real purpose. The real purpose is not to have a romantic relationship or a baby or this or that. The purpose is to grow. The purpose is to discover who we are inside, to discover our true potential, which is independent of circumstances and grows out of the divine within us. So get on with the real job, and then the rest of it will take care of itself.
Thank you. So we have a lot of questions from the live audience, Asha. The next one will be, how do we differentiate between divine intuition and vrittis that are embedded in our chakras?
Well, they're not. Vrittis in your chakras is the storehouse of karma. How karma moves from one incarnation to the next is through the energy body, which is the chakras. When the physical body dies, the energy body is intact. That's your consciousness. It moves into the astral world and then becomes the formative energy for whatever your future incarnations are. And a vritti is a whirlpool of energy, which has something at the center that is holding you. I want or I don't want. It could be either an attraction or an aversion, and then a whole lot of other decisions are made around I want or I don't want. A vritti of energy gets started, and then that's the magnetism that causes your karma to express. Now, divine intuition is the part of ourselves that knows, that has some understanding of where happiness comes from and what causes suffering. And so when those vrittis of karma begin to manifest as a life, we want to be able to discriminate in every situation what would really increase my happiness and what would really perpetuate my suffering. And we want to make a choice based on, obviously, on what will move us forward more toward our destiny, which is to be living constantly in the bliss of God. So it's not an opposition between intuition and karma. Intuition is what you do with karma. The karma is going to express anyway. And intuition, divinely inspired intuition, is saying, okay, given that I want or I don't want, given that my energy has attracted this experience, how can I relate to this experience in such a way that it will increase my understanding, increase my inner strength, increase my faith and relationship with God, rather than diminishing me and then just meaning I have to go through this one more time. So karma and intuition. Intuition is the way we deal with karma in such a way that we resolve it, transcend it, grow from it, rather than just keep on the wheel endlessly.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. So next one will be, can you burn karma with chanting?
Well, you see, karma is just energy. Karma is not a fixed thing. I mean, all of our past life experiences, they're not living within us. All those bodies are gone. What's in us is a vibration. Okay, everything, it's like this. It's like if you think of a piano, from the lowest note to the highest note. Every note has a measurable vibration, a sound vibration that can be measured. The piano tuner comes, he knows he has the machine or whatever, and he can tune the piano from the lowest to the highest note according to the vibration of each note. For us, as human beings on this long journey, individuals on this long journey, delusion and enlightenment, it's a spectrum. And even though each of us is unique and lives out that particular vibration in a particular way, it's a measurable state of delusion. Like how much enlightenment do I have versus how much delusion vibrates in a certain frequency, you might say. And then we manifest that frequency in the way that is appropriate for us. And that's why everybody on this planet is so different. I forgot the question. Say it to me again.
Can you burn karma
Oh,
with
burn
chanting?
karma with chanting, right. So, but what we're doing is that at any point, whatever the karma is, however it specifically expresses, it's actually a certain vibration of energy, and it has a certain vortex, the vritti that we were talking about. The way you transcend it is you transform that energy into a more enlightened vibration. Just let's say as an example, a person may think, well, I can even use myself as an example, the question of having children. The only thing I ever wanted when I was growing up was to be a mother. I was going to have many children. I've never given birth to a single child. I've never been pregnant. Because at a certain point, I realized that what I wanted to do is I wanted to be helpful. I wanted to be helpful to the world. And it suddenly came to me, not suddenly, but slowly came to me, that in fact, even though it would also be expansive to a certain extent to raise children, which seems still to me like an extremely valid use of one's life, for me, it would tie me to just a few individuals. Whereas by not having children, I've been able to make a much larger family that I wouldn't have been allowed to do during those child-raising years when I was very dynamically active and very, very free. So it wasn't really that I had to renounce the desire to have children. It's that the vibration that represented, which was a desire to make a positive contribution to the world, I transformed it into something else. So anything that raises, that expands our understanding and makes us realize that it's not the things that we want outwardly, but it's who we are inside that we're trying to transform. That's how you transform karma. So yes, if you're holding on to a certain vibration because you think it's going to make you happy, and you do spiritual practices, and chanting and music and japa, all of these are wonderful spiritual practices, meditation, of course, what it does is it gives you what you want, but on a more subtle level. And then you see it's just energy to energy. And if the energy of the joy of chanting, let's say, becomes greater than the joy of having my own beautiful home in the mountains, then all of a sudden it's not like you don't want the home anymore. It's that you're so happy doing this that the happiness you were holding on to, defined by that home in the mountains, is just drawn into this. This is the metaphysical basis of people saying, you don't have to do anything, just meditate, it'll resolve all your karma. And it's true if you can meditate with enough magnetism, if you can bring enough magnetism to the spiritual eye, if your meditation can be deep enough that all of your longings are fulfilled and all of your regrets are resolved in an awareness of God's presence, you can just sit there and meditate for the rest of your life and all the karma will be dissolved. The problem is the wants and the aversions have a lot of energy, and you have to put out more energy that leads to more experience, so that it's not just a theory, but it's an actual experience. I am so content within myself that all of these things cease to exist. So for most of us, it's a combination. We have to live out a lot of that karma, and then while we're doing spiritual practices, it gradually helps untie that karma, and it all works together, ultimately, into a beautiful, positive whole.
Thank you. On that note, a member is asking, I keep trying to meditate, to concentrate. My spine is crooked. Am I held back due to this defect in my spine?
No, because your spine is, your spiritual spine is not physical. The physical, we speak of the spine, but it's actually not the physical spine at all. In fact, it's a plumb line down the center of your body. The spine is on the back, relatively speaking. So it's a plumb line from the top of your head to the base of your torso, and that it's a subtle energy field that moves up and down there. So no, the fact that your physical spine is twisted will not in any way impair you spiritually. It may make you physically uncomfortable, and you may have to work to adjust, and it's worth trying to do that because it could be physically distracting, but there's no possible way that it's actually spiritually inhibiting.
Thank you. Next one. Is it karma that my family relationships are so difficult?
Oh dear. Yogananda said, love of course is an attracting force, but so also is antipathy. When you love someone, you're focused on them, and when you don't like someone, you focus on them. So some families are drawn together, as Yogananda put it rather bluntly, to fight it out at close quarters. And it's because you built up a lot of negativity together, and that negativity has magnetism. Aversion also attracts. That's why we have to become even-minded about things and not so driven by likes and dislikes. I believe that I don't want to say I believe, I have observed that when karma starts from birth, whatever it might be, or comes into your life at a very young age, it's because this is the lifetime in which you get to work it out. Now, that does not mean that there's going to be a harmonious resolution, because working it out is not that everybody, like in the great happy ending, finally all sees the light and we all just live happily ever after. There can be many different solutions that are still a resolution for your particular karma. What is the karma that you're working with? Is it that you desperately want the people around you to recognize you and love you, and you're just going to keep throwing yourself against a brick wall where it's not going to happen because that need is so strong in you? So the issue may have nothing to do with the people who don't recognize and love you. It may have to do with the fact that, why am I so dependent on everybody else telling me that I'm okay? That can be part of it. It can be that you just have a tremendous inclination to be angry. And so you get to be in a place where you get to be angry all the time with really good cause. And is that really, is the response of anger really going to be helpful for you? Or you may, like to martyr yourself to serve others, and you get completely out of balance, feeling that your life doesn't belong to you. Or maybe just time to stay up and say, I don't need you, goodbye. So you have to really ask yourself, what is really being activated in me? And if it's been with you since the very beginning, be enthusiastic about it. Wow, I decided this lifetime I was really going to face into this. I wasn't going to give myself a moment's holiday. So here we are. So let me get on with the job. And be don't be narrow in your idea of what the job actually is, and don't be naive. Sometimes it's just, you just have to face. Life is very disappointing. That's what this spectrum between delusion and enlightenment is. It's crazy, and I really don't have a good answer for it. But this life is not at all what it seems. We have these deep longings within ourselves to be loved, to be recognized, to be safe. These are all in the chakras. Go to the YouTube channel, look up chakras, karma, reincarnation. These are natural human needs, and we are inclined to try to get them fulfilled outside of ourselves. But the fact of the matter is that the only resolution is within ourselves, in our relationship with God. It's a very big story, which is why it takes us so many incarnations. So if you get born into a family right from the start where none of those needs are fulfilled, it's easy to say, oh, I have bad karma. But it's just as true to say, wow, what great karma. You don't get to carry on the delusion at all. It's just taken away from you right from the start. I'm so lucky. I must be a real hero. I really have the opportunity to learn a really hard lesson. You see, it's all just how you look at it. But clearly, there's something in it that you have to face and overcome.
Thank you for that answer. Next one is, there is both personal karma and collective karma that we all have to face. How does collective karma affect us as individuals? What can we do to help build a better future for ourselves and those around us? And how can karma be resolved?
Well, the only power that you really have is over your own consciousness. And collective karma is just, it's the nature of the planet, and it's appropriate for us, or else we would not have come here. Collective karma, everything is energy. Think of it as it's the physics. There's a very good book written by a friend of mine. It's called The Physics of God. I highly recommend that you look at that. He also gives classes on the subject. He takes this whole issue of spirituality and he talks about it from the point of view of physics. The Physics of God. It's a great book. Okay, anyway, back to this. It's all about energy. And so collective karma is this force of energy that's going through society, and then you're there as an individual. And whether or not you will be overcome by the collective karma depends on how strong your own energy is. If you have built up the power within you to be self-determined and not just be a victim and not just go along, but really make your own decisions in your own way, then you exert a certain magnetism, and the collective karma, even if it's strong, your own magnetism will take you in another direction. So the simple answer to dealing with, well, global situation at this point, Yogananda made a remarkable statement talking about very hard times coming to this planet for various reasons. Look that up also on my YouTube channel, Personal and Planetary Evolution. Is that he said the purpose of the hard times is to awaken people to the need to have an inner relationship with God. That is the whole purpose. Therefore, if you are already working on that inner relationship with God, you won't be affected in the same way by the collective karma, because it's not your karma. You've already learned what it's there to teach. So it's all about, who am I? What is really motivating me? What is important to me? What are my values? What are my practices? And the balance will just work itself out according to what's most helpful to you. Yogananda made a very interesting statement. He said an airplane full of people could crash and everybody dies. He said, but he put it this way, it might not be the karma of everyone to die, but those who were overcome by the collective karma had not developed sufficient inner strength to not die. You see how odd that sounds? But that's exactly what he said. So, and how we can help the world is really simple. We begin to change ourselves. We begin to embrace the light. We begin to have a relationship with the divine, and then we emanate that. We affect people so much by our vibrations, much more than anything else that we do. Change your vibration, and then you are contributing to the good of the planet by the influence that you can have just over the people around you. I have noticed that this is a particular experience I've had, which is that I've been called a number of times to be present when a person is dying. And because of my understanding of spiritual life and my just particular orientation, it doesn't frighten me that people are dying. And I have observed, sometimes I'm in an atmosphere where I can speak. I've been also in an atmosphere with a dying person where there wasn't a word I could say. But the mere fact that I had an understanding and I was not afraid, and that I had faith in God, and I was helping that soul transition rather than being afraid of their transition. It has an enormous effect. You have no idea.
Thank you. That was a beautiful answer. So I think we'll do one more. And the question is, how do you know when a karmic relationship is over? How do you know if you have more lessons to learn?
We always have more lessons to learn. This woman came to me once and said, I have this really hard karma and I want to finish it. You can help me finish it. I said, I'm sorry, I'm not that powerful. I can't do that. I could help you progress it. We could move it from where it is now to a slightly better place. But the idea, this is the fantasy world that we live in. This is the romantic movies that somehow you get it done. No, you don't get it done, but you progress it. Instead of staying right where you are or going backwards, you move it forward. And so I don't mean to be rude, but don't even think that I'm going to finish the karma, but you might take it as far as you're able to take it. Swami said that specifically to me once when I was in a karmic situation that just suddenly went away. It wasn't resolved, it just went away. And I sort of said, is it finished? And he said, perhaps, and then he let that linger for a few seconds, but I don't think so. That was his response. But you've taken it as far as you can take it. And now you just have to grow in other ways before you're going to be able to finish this. And likely not in this lifetime. It's going to come back again, but I won't be the same person. And therefore, it won't just be a repetition. I'll be going up the spiral staircase, and I'll be a little bit freer. How can you tell when you've taken it as far as you can take it? It's better not to say, have I learned everything I can learn, because you probably haven't. But have I learned as much as I'm capable of learning now? And you see, you really grow through humility. And sometimes you just say, I'm not that good. There's more that I could learn here, but not today. I'm just not capable of learning it. The way I think about it is like this. Do you have any energy left to deal with this? Do you have any creative thoughts about how you're going to be able to make it better? Or are you just being, in a real sense, egoic, which is, I'm just going to stick it out? No. There has to be a level of hope, and not naive hope, not just, blind hope, but a real feeling that there's movement, there's change here. And sometimes you just have to say, I'm done. One of the phrases that works really well for me is, I'm not that good. Somebody might be able to learn more by sticking with this, but not me. I'm the one who I have to go somewhere where I have positive capability. I have creative life force. It doesn't serve you to die in place when you're actually not contributing anything. You have to be able to say, I have something to give. And if I have nothing left to give, then you just have to say, you have to trust Divine Mother. You have to trust yourself. You see, part of it is just having confidence in yourself. It's not that I don't want to, it's just that I'm used up. I'm just used up. But if you're just being lazy or being cowardly or whatever it might be, that's something else. But somebody else is involved. You also have to look whether it's realistic. It has to be some parity. If you have become more enlightened and you know that things are possible, but whoever you're dealing with isn't, it's just not a priority for them. They're not committed. They don't have the capability. You just have to be realistic. Life is profoundly, overwhelmingly, often very sad. And even though I'm talking very dynamically about these things, and I really want to say this, the question about the family that was so difficult to work with, oh my God. Please don't mistake my enthusiasm for the possible, for an insensitivity to the moment. You know, it's hard. And that's the progress from delusion to enlightenment, is that we're often throwing ourselves against a brick wall, thinking if I do it one more time, it'll turn into a door. And we just have to say, it's not a door, it will never be a door. The door is somewhere else, and then we just have to go and go through that door with the broken heart, but with the faith. And you see, it all has to play together. If Divine Mother could take me home by an easier road, she would take me that way. So if this is the only road that I have to walk, I have to hold on to her hand and trust that it will take me where I want to go. Okay?
Thank you, Asha. I think that was the last question.
Okay, my friends. So thank you so much, all of you who help support us. We're able to do all of this because of your enthusiasm for what we're doing, which is incredibly gratifying to me. This is what I always wanted to do in my life, is I wanted to learn something worth knowing, and I wanted to share it with others. And because of all your support, being members on YouTube, supporting us through Patreon, on Instagram, we have a whole Ask Asha channel where you can ask questions and we answer as many of them as we can. All of that we're deeply grateful for. And in the meantime, my friends, Asha means hope. It's the name that Swami Kriyananda gave me in my early 20s. And I've come to understand over many years of having this word actually be my name. That is the most important factor. And it's the hope that we have in our heart is the hope that we were actually born for happiness, and that whatever we have to struggle through to get there, there is a happy ending to this. But the happy ending lies in a slightly different place than the movies and the television shows and the novels tell us. It's within ourselves. But we can get there. We really can. There's an enormous amount of light coming into the planet at this time, and so many of us are waking up to this extraordinary potential. And if we just follow that light, that's all we have to do, just follow that light. Just in every situation, look for the light and follow it. Okay, God bless you, my friends.